everybody. It's a week before our next get-together, a week and a couple of hours, I guess. And so I'm going to record this preview. But it's going to be fairly brief because I've decided to change up the class a little bit. Although my intent was good, I have had the feeling, I have the sense that by giving you the entire lesson, really, right, on the preceding Thursday, that it takes a little bit of the steam out of our Thursday virtual meetings. That perhaps if you have in fact watched the hour plus video, PowerPoint video, that you just may feel that you've got all the information that you need, and you may or may not show up for next Thursday night, or you may or may not pay much attention to what's going on. Conversely, if you haven't watched the in advance PowerPoint, I can't imagine that that would be the case, that if you haven't watched it, and if you show up Thursday, you're probably going to get, all the most important, pertinent information that you're going to need. So for me personally, I guess our Thursday night get-togethers have felt a little bit too much like a rehash. So to avoid that, I'm going to switch up a little bit from now on, or until I have a better idea. I told you this was a learning experience for us all, so mostly for me maybe. I'm going to switch up, and I will in fact give you advanced preview of the lesson. In fact, you can see that this says student preview. But it's really, think of this as an agenda. Think of this as an agenda for what we're going to be speaking about next week. So I'm going to show you what it is. I'm going to just walk through the points, may say, here's what I'd like you to think about between now and then. So this is going to be pretty brief. Again, think of it as an agenda in PowerPoint format. It makes me think of the old adage that I guess it's been attributed to anyone from, I don't know, Aristotle to Dale Carnegie. Tell them what you're going to say it, and then tell them what you just said. So what I envision going forward is to give you this preview in advance, to hold our class, have our discussions, and then to immediately post the entire lesson to fill in all the blanks that the entire PowerPoint would have had, not narrated. Okay, so let's give this a try and see how it goes. There is one caveat to this coming week, and that is that we are going to have a guest speaker, Tom Johnson, who is retired, City of Rochester. He was the city's manager of civil service for, oh golly, I don't know, 15 or 20 years, overlapped with my manager of training and safety role. So Tom has done this pretty regularly with me in the past. He's going to join us next week. So when I hit that civil service section, I'm really just going to fly through that because it's his piece. He will be seeing this preview, and then again, he will be the one who's going to help fill the gaps. So this is going to really require more participation, I hope, from you all on Thursday night. So let's get started. Okay, so before we move forward, there's one other thing that I do want to say about this new format that I'm using. I think it's my hope also that the preview, the lead-in, the week's preparation that you do going into next Thursday's class has a great resource. And that resource is not my PowerPoint in advance. The resource really is the textbook. So I've often said I don't teach heavily from it, but in the new age of virtual and trying to fill in gaps and trying to cover things as completely as I can, I would really encourage you to let that be your preview. Take a look at it. It'll help begin to answer some of the questions. You'll see the direction that I'm trying to take us in these lessons, corresponding to this agenda that I'm going to present you with. So in this case, Part 2, Chapters 3 and 4, Recruitment, Selection, and including Civil Service as part of selection. Okay, so that's a little bit of my hope and agenda as we go forward. So the first thing that will lead into next Thursday is to just ask you the simple question. What do you see as the cost and consequences of a bad hire? What's your experience been? What have you witnessed? If you haven't witnessed it, what might you suspect? The cost, how would you monetize it? What is the expense to an organization in first recruiting? And then if you have to, throw it all out the window, the cost of doing it again, what factors, how would you monetize that? And then the consequences to the organization. Uh, what roads might having the wrong person in the wrong job take you down? There are several, so where might you end up as a result of a bad hire? Give that some thought because I really like your input into what your experience has been. We're going to discuss the whole process from vacancy to onboarding, not including onboarding, but from vacancy to hire. Okay, so where do you even begin? And that's going to vary by organization. That's going to vary by size of an organization. A small organization of 4 or 5 people, we have a vacancy, we have to fill it. Large organization, the city, the county, some of the health care agencies in the city, large business and industry, um, probably a lengthier, more complicated, but there are things that they are going to have in common, regardless of the size, regardless of the complexity of the organization. There are going to be certain core things that they're going to have in common. So again, uh, what steps do you see? Where do you begin? How do you get from vacancy to hire? See how quiet I was? I showed you what we're going to be talking about. Okay, so um, inform yourself, and we will cover the tools and the recruitment, um, the steps that you take, the steps that are part of the process. I will leave the summary page to take a look at you, and this will conclude the first portion, the briefer portion of next Thursday, selection and development, before we cross into civil service. I've already mentioned Tom to you. Tom is a longtime colleague. I won't say a lot right now. I'll give him a chance to introduce himself, and you all introduce yourselves briefly next Thursday. One of the things that I should say, especially next week, is that the new format that I'm going to be using is going to require me to really keep an eye on our time. Much as I like HR in the news, probably going to put that, and I'll send you a note, like probably put a really firm, 5-minute discussion. And I'm the one who violates the time. I absolutely get that because I get fascinated. I like the exchange. But as we go forward for this to work, um, I'm going to say right now, 5-minute discussion, 5 or 7 minute discussion on each of the HR and the news topics. Last week was really difficult, and I should have seen that coming because it was you doing the HR, a couple of you doing the HR and the news, followed by everybody participating in the HR law portion, which just eats up time. I think it's valuable. I like to hear from you. This just changes how I'm going to hear from you. Okay, so we're going to keep a closer watch on time, and I may do some time enforcement. Tom is going to cover these 5 points, some background and information, some history. We're going to give you a little bit of a history lesson of how civil service came to be. He's going to talk a little bit about the local Civil Service Commission, its impact, civil service law impact on recruitment and selection, a bit of a tie-in to the first portion of the evening, which is why, by the way, I combined the two. when this went from weekly to hybrid and I had to see what kind of things I had to combine, this seemed like a natural match. Information about civil service exams and exam administration, and then a look at eligible lists and how they are established. As Tom and I began to take a look at this lesson, there were things that we wanted to tease with, things we wanted to show you, give you a glimpse of, other things we're going to wait on next week's lesson. But we wanted to share this with you because it's kind of wordy, and Tom will talk to you about exactly what it means when civil service, how civil service defines merit and fitness, and that really funky word practicable, that positions be filled by merit and fitness, and as far as practicable through competitive examination. So that's kind of the heart and soul of New York State civil service law. Oops, there it is. Sorry about that. Which, as far as practicable, shall be competitive. Public sector, human resource, environment, the things covered by civil service law. We're not going to do an exhaustive reach into all of these. The state of New York and its civil service jurisdictions. I'm kind of stealing his introductory remarks a little bit, but you see that civil service jurisdictions are counties and our cities. And so sometimes, yes, counties and cities. I'm kind of looking at the map because there may even be an exception or two, but I think it's buried beneath my face. You can see at the very bottom it says City University of New York, City University CUNY. It has its own civil service jurisdiction. So you see towns, you might see some towns, you might see some villages, but mostly you're going to see counties and cities. State of New York, there's the County of Monroe and Rochester, New York State Civil Service Commission, located in Albany. And here we get to Monroe County. Monroe County has its own Civil Service Commission, and the City of Rochester its own. The county represents all the surrounding towns and villages, and the city is the city. And we will talk to you a little bit about how that came to be and what they each include and don't include. The second section that he will cover is the Civil Service Commission, how it's comprised, what its responsibilities are. We'll talk about position classification and jurisdictional classification. Jurisdictional classification will have the unclassified service. This is the teaser. Tune in next week. And classified service is comprised of the competitive class, the non-competitive class, labor class, and the exempt class. In the classified service, this is a sub. I probably should have knocked this slide out, but there's your jurisdictional, again, competitive, non-competitive, labor, and exempt. I am not going to go back and redo the entire presentation because I'm halfway through and just had a glitch. The competitive class, these are brief descriptors, competitive class. You can read that. We're going to tell you more next week. But obviously, competitive examination, back to the where practicable. Non-competitive, labor class, the exempt class. Exempt is interesting. Positions that you could test for, but for other reasons are held as exempt, and there is not a competitive examination. So
Is there a little overlap in this slide? Sorry, but this is just a summary of the city of Rochester and the percentage within each jurisdictional class: competitive, non-competitive, labor exempt, and the unclassified service. So you see that 69.7% of competitive examinations. And then if you take the competitive and the non-competitive, we're at 89, 90%. So that has testing in one way or another. It may be a competitive test or it may be a non-competitive test. See if you can find out what that means in advance. Third topic in civil service, recruitment for jobs and exams. The types of announcements that we, at least in the city and the county as well, use in the state, city, county, state, governmental jurisdictions. This is just an example. We will speak of the scope of an examination. This is an example of a state job announcement. When we refer to the scope of an exam, you see toward the bottom here, in the white background, the subject of the examination. The scope tells you specifically what is going to be tested for. So if you want to practice for a test, if you want to study for a test, you always look at the scope of the exam. Information about exams. Down at the bottom with the running into the blue and black, it says miscellaneous info, fees, cross-filing, residency, promotional, and open competitive exams, in case you can't see that. So the importance of good civil service administration and using good exams that are as connected to the duties of a job as possible. We're going to take a look at eligible lists, which list is used, how our list certified, and then kind of the heart and soul of civil service selection from a civil service exam list, the rule of three, which sounds simple but can sometimes get a little bit complicated and a little bit confusing. Okay, imagine having hundreds of people tied at one score, or something like that. All right, so think on what questions you might have when we get to rule of three. I'm just going through these. Take a look at them. We will be covering these thoroughly next week.
So I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to tell you just yet why you will have earned a James Garfield badge. That's part of our history lesson that we're going to present to you, I think. But I hope I've given you enough to show you where we're going, the topics we're going to be covering next week. Do know that much has been deleted from this. So I hope that I've given you enough information so you can see what's coming and prepare yourself. But not so much that you've got it all at this point. Okay, so next week we're going to fill in the blanks. Content will be added. And as we have that class, as we have the lesson, we finish the lesson, you're going to get, well, I'll tell you what's missing here. I'm on slide 42 of 49 right now. The few that follow are sort of FYI city, county, state job sites, which is truly just for your information. But the entire PowerPoint presentation that Tom and I have used in the past for this night is 68, 69 slides long. And so You will receive it all as we go through the lesson. At the end of the lesson, you're going to get the whole thing. So what you saw above are just headers and maybe brief descriptors of each point. So I will see you next week for for the balance of the lesson. Look forward to seeing you all. Hope you're all doing well. Have a great week, and I'll see you in 7 days. Thank you. Bye.